Hello, and welcome to the Educated Black Female Perspective. My name is Dr. Shawania Marshall, your host, and tonight I have an amazing guest on. His name is Mr. Nicholas Bonds, and I'm super excited to have my fraternity brother collaborate with me for episode 9 titled Voting 2026. Welcome, Mr. Bonds. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and yourself? Thank you
I
for having me on.
You're welcome. And thank you. I am doing just fine. So, everyone, this segment again is titled Voting 2026. Politics matter. You may not like politics, but politics impact everyone. So, before we begin, I do want to share a little synopsis about my guest so you will know why I invited him on because I believe he is going to be an amazing asset to talk about some of the issues that are centered around politics and voting. So, Mr. Nicholas Vaughn was born on May the 17th, 1980, in Lima, Ohio, and he was raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Vance has built his life around service, leadership, and creating opportunities for others. He is a proud Air Force veteran with a diverse academic background, holding a bachelor's degree in information technology, an associate's degree in massage therapy, and an associate's degree in computer aided drafting and design. He is a dedicated member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And a member of Prince Hall Masonry, and a father of eight who leads by example. His passion for community has inspired him to establish and operate a nonprofit youth football and cheer organization where he mentors young athletes and helps to build character, discipline, and pride. Love that. Mr. Vines is driven by creativity and ambition. He is working toward opening his own restaurant, which is his dream, rooted in culture, family, and the desire to build something lasting. His life reflects resilience, service, and a commitment to leaving a legacy for his children and his community. So, to everyone out there, Mr. Vons, he is our guest for tonight. So, we're going to go ahead and get down to business. So, I want to just open up with just an informal icebreaker. And if it's okay first, Nicholas, if I call you by your first name, you can call me Shawana because this is informal. So feel free to call me Shawana. So we know we just came off of the primary election on yesterday. And so tonight we're going to talk about the importance of voting, some of the critical issues that are going on. So I want to open up with you telling me, Mr. Vons, Nicholas, how do you feel about what transpired on yesterday as it relates to the primary elections? You can talk about one race or what just stood out for you.
Well, for what I've noticed, that a lot of Democrats did not come out and vote yesterday. That was kind of disappointing. The Republicans actually showed, that they care about who's in office to them. A lot of them do vote against their own best interest, but from what I've seen, a lot of people, Democrats, they vote sometimes, and then if it doesn't fit them, then they're not going to vote at all. But they're not understanding that a no vote is the same as a vote. That you're just voting for the opposition versus the person who you need to be in office. So it's been that, especially in the governor's race here in Alabama, it's rough. The candidates that we had, sometimes you have to pick your poison, but you have to see what works best for you. You don't want to go with something that is not going to be right overall, period. Because like I said, most Republicans vote against their own best interest.
Now that is interesting, but I love what you said too. When it comes down to voting, and I know for me, I typically look at candidates who are in line, or we are, when I think about their morals and values, like we have that alignment, we have that connection. But I do like how you acknowledge and you really are stating the truth. Sometimes people on the Republican side, they will vote for people who are in opposition of their values, which is sad. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do want to share with people, this year 2026 is so critical because this is the year of the midterms. And of
Right.
course, this is the year in which we, the voter, have the right to vote for people. And in essence, the winner will go on to represent the particular party. But also during this particular year, for the midterm year, coming off of the primary elections, we have the opportunity to ensure that our vote for individuals who are serving in the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, when we vote for these people during midterms, these are the people who are representing us in those two areas. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we talk about the House of Representatives, these are the people who are enacting laws. So
Right.
that's why midterms are essential, they are critical, and you do want to come out and vote. And so tonight, I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about the importance of the midterms, the importance of voting. And so these are some of the issues that I want to talk about tonight. There are issues going on right now as it relates to gerrymandering, which is the same thing as redistricting. And there are issues that are really at stake. We're talking about budgets as it relates to education, HBCU funding. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about Title One TRIO programs. I know I participated in them. And so these are major programs that impact a lot of people. And a lot of times these are issues that impact people of color. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we talked about the primary election on yesterday. I did want to share, for me living in Georgia, because I know, Nicholas, you shared you lived in Alabama, and
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about the governor's race. So in our state, of course, the governor's race is a huge race. We have Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who actually won as for the Democratic nominee. But then we have on the Republican side, Burt Jones. And then we have Rick Jackson, who will have to move forward in the runoff. And so when I was thinking about, hey, and honestly, I'm grateful that, and I am really appreciative that Mayor Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta, this is Keisha Lance Bottoms, won, because in my opinion, I did feel like she was one of the better candidates. She's
Right.
experienced. She has done a lot as it relates to criminal justice reform. She is a proponent of education and ensuring that, even this year, she really talked about ensuring that every 4-year-old has the opportunity to, start a 4-year-old program. And so she's working behind the scenes to make sure that there is funding and programs for that. She's really big on ensuring that affordable housing is in place. So I really was happy about that. But when I think about who she will be going up against, every time I see on television a commercial, and I see the two candidates who are going at it on the Republican side, I'm like, you all spend more time attacking each other. And I'm just honest. If
Mm-hmm.
you can stand up and say that you support this current administration and you proudly support them, for me, it's a no-brainer. There
Right.
is no way that I could vote for you, because the morals and values that you stand for are not in line with mine. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my take on, that one particular highlight. Of course, and I want everybody to know all the different races, they all matter, from the local level, all the way up to the House of Representatives, the Senate, governor, all of them matter. And so just
Excuse
for, the sake of time, I did want to give everyone the opportunity to at least hear from us, some things that stood out. So super proud of former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and all the other candidates that represent me, my morals, and my values. So with that being said, we're going to really get into the heart of this segment, gerrymandering, the whole redistricting issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share with the audience, when we talk about redistricting, this process intentionally is the redrawing of congressional maps that allow one party to be able to have an unfair advantage. And so when I think about right now with all of these redrawing of maps, it's giving Republicans that overwhelming majority where you think about the Democrats and our representation, we're losing that. And so this is important. So I want everybody to understand when you hear that term gerrymandering, all it is talking about is the whole redistricting and just redrawing of these maps. And so I wanted to share in multiple states. We've seen Alabama, we've seen Tennessee, we've seen California, Florida, Missouri, North Carolina. There are multiple states who have been engaging in this process. And so, Nick, my question to you, as I looked at more information behind the whole redistricting, typically it occurs every 10 years through the census. So,
Right.
what are your thoughts as you hear almost now every week a state jumping on board to engage in this redistricting process?
You know, the problem with what's going on right now is typically right now it's the South, and their agenda is blatant right now. You know, we want to limit the amount of African American representations that we have coming into office, and it's blatant because as soon as the Supreme Court of the United States passed that, you notice every state in the South decided, okay, let me start doing this. Let me get on the train as well. It started out in Louisiana, and then it came to Tennessee, then it came down to Alabama. And even though Governor Kemp said that he would not do it, he would not even get in that, he turned around and did the same exact thing. As a matter of fact, our governor here in the state of Alabama decided to call a special session to do it. And it's like, y'all are blatantly telling us to our face, we don't want y'all, we want to wipe everything. We want white everything.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, black people better wake up. Because if you don't get out there and vote, guess what? We're going to be back in the Jim Crow days.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be in that segregated and not being, I'm not a racist by no means, you know, because people are people. But when you have a lot of racism going on already in the South and they're showing you who they are, believe them. Just like you were saying about this current administration. If you align with them, come on. They have no morals whatsoever. They don't care anything about anybody who is in the middle class, even though they have somehow convinced 80 million people that they are the best choice to be in office. And you know, this gerrymandering thing is unfair right now because now you're trying to take away our voice. And at the end of the day, if we don't stand up and do what we're supposed to do, then they will take away our voice.
It is so like it's emotional for me. Like every time I hear of something like this happening, and I think back, I want to say, I don't know if it was early this year or the end of last year where Texas, Governor Abbott did it out in Texas.
Yeah.
And so I saw it there. I saw how it impacted, Congressman Jasmine Crockett and her race. And now we're moving to, into us approaching like we just had our primary. I'm thinking, you don't typically hear this happening during the election year.
Right.
I mean, they have literally, after this, like you said, the Supreme Court Justice 6-3, it's like every state now is trying to jump on board. And what has infuriated me, you're right, Governor Kemp said he wasn't even getting engaged. And then the next thing I saw was there was an article saying, oh, I'm going to do it, but it will not take effect until 2028. And my issue with that is you are leaving office.
Exactly.
Why are you even trying to, put your 2 cents in to even engage in this? So my prayer, my hope is that even though he's trying to do this sometime in June, my hope is that former mayor of Atlanta, it's hard not to say it, but former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, my hope is that she wins, because if he tries to implement that before she gets into office, she can just basically override it. That's my hope. So I did want to talk about the state of Virginia. So the state of Virginia had created, this new map, and it was actually blocked from certification. And so in the state of Virginia, they said, okay, well, we have all these states who are predominantly red states, and they're trying to give themselves that, advantage over the Democrats. So we're going to create our own map. But then
Yeah.
it gets to their high court and they strike it down. And the part that has infuriated me the most is it seems, no, it seems, it's not that it seems, it is happening.
Right.
You see states where they are predominantly red states, you're approving their maps. But
Yeah.
then you have states like Virginia, you're striking it down. And so, of course, you talked about Louisiana. You had those two uh, districts that were, it allowed for Black people and people of color to have representation. So they're now dealing with losing that one seat and only having that the one. And so I look at South Carolina, another state, for years, Jim Clyburn has represented that minority district. And so the only minority district, and they are trying to basically do away with that district. And so essentially, with all of this redrawing of the maps, what will eventually happen if all these states get their way from the red states, the Republicans will accumulate 17 seats, and the Democrats, if they get their way, will accumulate 6. 17 seats.
Mm-hmm.
That is truly not balanced. So I know we kind of talked about it at the beginning, but how do you feel about the chaos that this is creating? Because, like you said, it's southern states. It is impacting people of color, Black people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a hard pill to swallow.
Right. But you know what? It's fear.
Mm.
A lot of things that white men do is basically fear. Like fear of losing control, the fear of having someone that's not their same complexion do things better than them. You know, historically, Black people have always started 10 yards behind the starting line. You know, we've always had to fight our way to have whatever we want. And we can still do it to this day. I mean, I take a look at President Obama. President Obama had to be a Rhodes Scholar. You know, he had to have a degree from Harvard. He had to be excellent in everything he did. He had to have a clean nose. This was one Black man who won office not once but twice. Now you have a president in office, and he could do everything wrong and still be praised. You know, and it's not because he's doing a great job. It's because he aligns with the people that are praising him. You know, and a lot of these people are in fear, and he puts money in these people's pockets. So it's like, to have Black people to really rise up in power, that scares them. You know, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see these Black people up here in power, and they're feeling inferior to us, because they've always, since the beginning of time, since the Europeans came and stole this country, you know, they've always implemented fear, and let everyone know that they were the superior race. But little do they know, they only make up 8% of the world. You know, but you want to come in to the United States and say, yeah, we're the superior race. You've never been the superior race. You know, but to answer your question, yeah, it's really upsetting to me to even know that they're going to these measures to make sure that we have less representation in office. That's cool. That's not cool whatsoever. You know, and as Black people, we should be infuriated. We should be like, you know, this is pissing us off. Let's get out there and vote. Let's make our voices known, because really at this time, that is what we have. And then the power is in the people. It's not, if we get out there and vote. I remember with Stacey Abrams, when Georgia turned blue, she got out there, and I tell you, she campaigned and she got them people to the poll, and Georgia finally turned blue. That's what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to continue that same energy and continue and continue and continue, because when I tell you, if things continue on the route that is going right now, it's going to be a disaster in the United States.
You're absolutely right. I did want to share, like, one of our guests. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. He was saying that the goal, that he believes the goal is for the Republican Party. Their goal is to turn all of the states red
Yeah.
to red states. And in my head, it really goes back to what you were saying, the idea of fear. And for me, I was just raised different. When I look at people, I love all people. I have everyone's best interest at heart. And as I think about what's unfolding in this political realm, the voting realm, and I still love all people, but I am going to always advocate on behalf of what's right. And what is going on right now is not right as it relates to people of color. I don't care who you are. I don't care if we know each other. We had a relationship. I'm going to speak the truth, whether you like it or not. And this is where we tend to see people for who they are.
Mhm.
Because if you support this these illegal attempts of redrawing, then you truly don't love your neighbor. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, um, just having a conversation about the evangelical Christians. If you say you love God, but you are supporting the redrawing of these maps because you are telling us as Black people our votes don't matter,
Mhm.
then how can you truly say that you love us and then you also love God that you've never seen, but you're treating your fellow man as if they don't exist?
Exactly.
That they don't mix. They don't mix. But I want to go back to fear. I remember seeing a clip where somebody was talking about if Black people did or treated you the way that you all have treated us over the years, you couldn't take it. You couldn't
At all.
handle it. And I listened to this. When I listened to him speak, I can't recall his name, but just hearing him speak, he was saying, "But that's not us. That's not who we are. We're not going to treat you like you treated us years
Mhm.
ago." Because we don't operate like that. But what we do have to do as a people is strategize and plan. Like you said, when Stacey Abrams lost in that first governor's race,
Mhm.
oh, she might have stepped back, but when she stepped back, she was planning, she was strategizing, and you're right. We absolutely turned the state of Georgia blue, and that's what it's going to take. And I do want to say this as you're talking about that. I saw this on one of my, he's like a brother to me, Mr. Kennedy's page. He was showing how it was a few years ago when it was in the Senate race in Alabama. It was Tommy Tuberville, against Doug Jones. And he
Doug
showed,
Jones.
it was like this map. And I saw it this morning, and it showed it was well over 50% of voters that came out to vote that were Republicans in
Mhm.
comparison to Democrats. And I was like, Lord, this was in 2020. So when I saw that, I said, Lord, fast forward now, we're in 2026. So I don't know what the dynamics were on yesterday,
The
but
same.
it was about the same. Okay, so that's what you were talking about earlier. So my
Mhm.
concern is, okay, are we missing people who have not registered to vote in Alabama? Is
Yeah.
this truly a representation of people who have voted? And I'm from Alabama, so I know being in Alabama and Georgia, this is the heart of the South. It's the heart of racism.
Mhm.
It's rooted. It's just there, and it still exists.
Yeah.
But as I shared with him this morning, I'm gonna share with everyone out there. If you have not voted, you should be using what's going on right now as fuel to vote, or tell somebody that to tell somebody like, hey, if you need assistance, you need help on registering to vote, or if you need somebody to talk to you about why it's important to vote, which we're going to get into that next.
You're right.
Talk to them, because when I saw that, the representation, and like you said, it was like that yesterday, that's a problem. That means somebody is not registered, or people are not going to vote.
Yeah.
And so I want to go into, I do want to point this out in that recent case in Louisiana versus Calais, in that recent decision. Justice Alito, he wrote and claimed that racial disparities in voting are no longer in existence. And I'm thinking, really? It's no longer a problem? And so we think about this particular Chief Justice and the other six that stood by this decision, gutting the Voting Rights Act of 2025. What is your take on those Supreme Court justices that sided? Like, what are your thoughts on them?
Well, one, it's disappointing for one, and two, those people are cowards. And the reason why I call them cowards is because my simple fact is, you know what's right. You didn't get to become Supreme Court justice by doing wrong. You had to learn the law. You had to acknowledge the law. and now it's like you were bought in. You're telling people that, and I've heard it here in Alabama, whether people say stuff like, "Well, we're only undoing the gerrymandering because it was racist to begin with." And how is it that black people having rights to vote is racist? The only reason that was put in motion in the first place was because we did not have the right to vote. You're talking about there's only 13% African Americans in the United States of America. So the majority are white people when it comes to a single race. And if you are saying that these 13% is racist, as far as trying to redistrict them and or whatnot, where they don't have a voice, then you're misunderstanding what the problem was in the first place. The problem was we couldn't vote. The problem was you did everything in your power to keep us from voting. And this is to my non-voters that say that their voices don't count, their vote doesn't count. If you thought your voice or your vote didn't count, why do you think they are trying so hard for you not to vote? Do you really think that they would be even remotely going through any of this redistricting if they thought that your vote didn't count? We have to wake up and understand that we are important. Everything that we have done is important. Black people, we built this country. We built this country. All they did was made a profit off of us.
Absolutely. So you said a lot of what you said, I touched on. And actually, it's funny that you said some things because I'm like, wow, that was going to be one of my next questions. So when you talk about the fact that why people don't vote, and essentially it's as if they really think about it, the reason they're going through all this, if they think about why are they going through so much trouble to redraw the map, is essentially because your votes do really matter. Like they do have an impact. And so I wanted to share like two comments that came up because I think it kind of ties in this. One of our guests had shared that his question was, why is it that the burden of saving America falls on the shoulders of Black people? And so just me kind of thinking about that, I do believe that because it's impacting us so much, we have to really realize how important it is. And I believe the burden shouldn't totally fall on us, but the reality is what we see right now, the people of the majority don't see that we really matter, like our votes matter. So we have to step up to the plate as a people, as Black people, as people of color. And honestly, this is and as bad as I hate to say it, it has become our burden to bear, because if we don't, who else is going to step up? Like I would love to see other people of the majority, and there are some people who are in the fight with us. I see them out there protesting. I do believe they go out there and vote. Right. But unfortunately, right now, the burden is falling on us as people of color, and we can't complain if we don't vote. We can't complain if we don't see the seriousness of this. And this kind of ties into one of our other guests' comment. They were saying that the problem is getting registered voters to actually go vote and take election serious. I do believe that that is a problem because we saw that in the presidential election, the last presidential election. When I think about the numbers of people who did not go out and vote in that presidential election, it was truly sad.
It was.
However, I do believe that people like us, people like the guests that tune in, people who are really truly concerned about our country, we have to keep talking to people. We have to keep spreading the word. And I do believe that somebody that's not as interested in voting, or someone who doesn't really take it as serious as us, all it takes is one person. And I've seen people who, just because you may have talked to them, like it made a difference. So we can't stop. We have to keep spreading the word. And I love how I see people that, whether they're on my Facebook page or other social media platform, they still talk about these things. I don't want to hear nothing about your fancy shoes, how much money you spent on Michael Jordans, how much, what the new latest trend is. If you can't talk to me about something that's going to help us move our country forward, like I'm just honest like that. I don't really care about all that. Like right now, more than ever. And I've never been that person that was caught up in money and, all the fancy things. Yeah, we need it and it makes impact. But I've also been that person that cared about people and
Right.
making sure that people's best interests were served. So for me, that that's just how I feel about it. So what would you say? I do want to ask your perspective on it. Like, how when you think about getting people to take voting serious and getting people motivated about voting, like, how would you approach that? And those who say voting doesn't matter.
Well, the problem is a lot of is misinformation. You know, we tend to listen to celebrities, and they will tell us that, well, your vote doesn't count. All they're going to do is just still put whoever they want to put in office. No, because the problem is, and I said this earlier, your no vote is a vote, whether you voted or not. That's how the person who's occupying the Oval Office right now got in office. He didn't get in office because we knew the people who was going to vote for him. We all knew that. That was everybody who aligns with him. you know. But it's the people who did not vote that I blame for him being in office. And that's the thing. Every election is an important election because whether somebody directly affects your life, eventually it's going to affect somebody who's in your circle. It's going to affect someone who's in your family. It's going to affect you eventually. So while you're telling people that they're going to put whoever in office who they want in office, that's not the truth. How you think? You think they put Obama in office because he wanted to be, just because he was, we just want our first black man in office? No, that makes no sense. No, people got out and voted because they wanted him in office, and that's the thing. You had 2 times Trump won, and I don't think people understood this though. Each time he won against a female. And the reason I say that is,
True. That is true.
cowards are bullies, so he bullied those people. But what happened when he went against Biden? He lost. So don't tell me your vote does not count. You got to actually vote to even say that to somebody. How do you know that your one vote didn't make that person win? Or your one vote that you did not vote made the opposition win? So you got to stop listening to celebrities. Stop listening to those people. Do the homework. Go do the research yourself and learn about these candidates. Hey, this person aligns with me. Oh, this person doesn't see my values. It's easy to do. We have the worldwide web right now. You can go research anything you want to research, and you ain't got to listen to what someone's telling you. Just read it for yourself. Do your own homework and stop listening to people tell you who to vote for. Because at the end of the day, a no vote is a vote.
I love that. I will reiterate and echo what you said. Do your research. Like, whenever I share things about candidates or voting period, I will never tell people who to vote for, but I will give information. And I'll say, do your research. And I will say, I like how you brought up the celebrity piece. If you are going to listen to a celebrity, still do your research.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually going to be one of my questions, because as I saw a post from, and she's I guess like a famous model, whatever, and she was talking about the candidates here in Georgia, and she was basically sharing why she's not voting for Keisha Lance Bottoms. And so in her post, I was like, she talked about things that made her want to vote for one candidate over her, and some of the things she listed was not true. And when I read that, of course, I commented professionally and I said, respectfully, this is not true, because she actually did stand up for what happened to this person when it was basically someone who died. And you probably remember Rayshard Brooks, what happened with him here in Atlanta. When that happened, she immediately fired the officers. Well, this person was saying, well, no, she did not. She did not fire the officers. She supported the officers. And I was like, that is clearly misinformation, because I followed that when it happened in that Wendy's parking lot. And I had to clarify, this is what happened. She immediately fired those officers, and she caught backlash behind it.
She sure did. I remember that.
Yes. And then she said, well, she left the city of Atlanta hanging. No, she did not. She clearly said she chose not to run again. So if someone said they're not going to run another for another term, that is her right. And so those were two things that I vividly remember. I'm thinking, so you're feeding this misinformation with all these followers that you have. And I remember somebody commented and said, "Oh, I didn't know that." But he did have enough sense to say, "I need to go back and do my research." And I was like, "Please do, because this is not what happened." So going back to misinformation, and she had tons of followers, and I'm thinking she had the little video put together so well, but you were feeding people misinformation, and people that saw that, they literally were like, "I didn't know she did that." And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, please don't buy into that and do your research, because you're like, Google is free. Like, you're not losing anything by researching. So thank you for sharing that, because that is truly important. So I wanted to share something that I saw as it ties into like right now what's going on with the whole elimination and the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. There was this Speaker of the House in Alabama by the name of Nathaniel Ledbetter.
Mhm.
And so he stated in an interview that he hopes that the Supreme Court overturns the 14th Amendment.
Yep.
And so we all know that the 14th Amendment was established giving people birthright citizenship. It provided all citizens with equal protection under the law. This amendment authorized the government to also punish states that infringe on citizens' right to vote. And so, as we think about the overturning of the 14th Amendment, if that were to happen, like, what are your thoughts on that? And just blatantly actually saying that out in public, like, I hope they overturn it. Like, the 14th Amendment was so essential to ensuring that people like us, had those rights and protections. So, what are your thoughts about that? Because you do live in Alabama now.
You know what? And I saw that same thing, and when I read it, I was like, I just shook my head because at this point, the hate that these people have, it's ridiculous. It's despicable. It's downright just ungodly, and somewhere in their brain, they think that's right. Somewhere in their mind, in their hearts, they go home and lay down and say, I did the right thing by saying what I said and doing what I did. And I wonder, what God are they praying to? I wonder, like, what God do they worship that says, hate thy enemy? Because I have seen over and over in the Bible to say, love thy neighbor over and over again, and love thy enemy. You know, one, black people shouldn't be an enemy to you at all. Why would you hate us? We are the reason a lot of y'all even had anything at this moment at all. So you're hating on people because of the color of their skin. And I said this a long time ago. Uh, a lot of white people, it's their skin is a curse.
Mm,
And the reason I say that, I mean, you think about it. They have no protection. They're the only race that really gets a lot of skin cancer. They're the only race that get burned the way they get burned. They're the only race that turns multiple colors. They have somehow convinced people that white is right and black is wrong. And I come here to tell you that that's not right. Because no color is right or no color is wrong. Period. People are people. You're
mhm.
supposed to love whomever. And for someone to sit there and go against the 14th Amendment, first of all, if that wasn't put into the Constitution in the first place, then what was the point? Or them even putting it in there?
Absolutely.
But for you to come back and say that you hope that they take that, like, change that, why? How's that going to benefit you?
I absolutely agree with you. Like, when people have the boldness to say things like that, the overturning of the 14th Amendment, just supporting what's going on right now, like, to me, that goes back to what's in your heart.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that, racism existed, but I'm thinking, and I've often had to sit back and think, Lord, we're in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
2026. We are no longer in the days of Jim Crow, but it feels like under this current administration. And the reality is, I saw it when this administration was in power,
The first.
in the first term. And the reality is, people started, you saw the true colors that existed in people. And even now, you see it again. And to me, it's like moments of disbelief that people are bold enough to say some of the things that they say. Recently, I don't know if it was in Tennessee or whatever state, this was like in an open forum. And this Caucasian man called one of our, like my people, the N word. You blatantly said that. And so, of course, I don't know if it was the next day or a few days later, he got approached. So it was apparently he called the female the N word, but then he was approached again with the female and the male addressed it. And he basically approached him about, like, why did you say that? Now I want you to say it while I'm here.
Was
And
that the one that was going into the courtroom?
yes,
I
yes.
saw that.
And, and it was like, he couldn't say it. So it's for me, it's like, number one, it should have never been said.
Yeah.
For you to use that word and the audacity, the boldness, it basically shows me what type of person you are. You're just a racist, and that's just the reality. Um, and I know we could go on and on about that, but I do want to get to the next topic. States taking action. So we've seen out in California. California, of course, is not playing. Governor Newsom is not playing with these people. So last year they passed Proposition 50. And this allowed a temporary redrawing of their congressional districts, which really boosted the Democratic seats out in California. Mm-hmm. And it was really like after Texas did their withdrawing, Governor Newsom was like, okay, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it. Right. and I love that. And so I do want to add Virginia, even though there's the high court did not approve it, the people voted for it. They voted for the redrawing of the map. So when you hear about California, you hear about what happened in Virginia. What's your take on people and their voices and how they feel about how much they want to be heard? Because to me, that's powerful. Virginia is one of those states, when I think about the Electoral College, California too, they have a lot of numbers out there. So what's your take on people and their voices and how they're
fed up?
Go ahead.
They're fed up. They're tired. They're like, hey, you know what? Since y'all don't want to do right, we're going to let you know that the power is in the people. And that's true. The power is in the people. The power has always been in the people. You think about the Constitution. What does it start off with? We the people. So, without the people, you don't have anything. Absolutely. And that's what people got to understand, how much power you have. The government can't do anything without you. And the thing, Governor Newsom, he was awesome. After Texas did what they did, he said, okay, hold my beer, because I'm finna come back. I'm finna one up you. And the thing is, I think if other states would follow the lead of doing the right thing, this country has potential to be a great country. It's not great, but it has the potential to be great if we can get on one accord as people. Throw races out. You're people. No matter what color you are, guess what color you bleed. So the thing is, at the end of the day, you were born and you're gonna die one day.
Absolutely.
So treating people, it doesn't cost you anything to treat your neighbor good. Not one thing. A lot of these racists are cowards. They operate out of fear. A lot of things, and I've said this a while ago too. White people are afraid of being a minority. You think about all the different minorities in this country. When you add them up, they are essentially the minority. So they are afraid of that. So all of this that's going on right now is to make sure that they can limit losing that conscious, or that thing in their brain of, oh my God, we're going to be the minority. Who cares? Why do you even care about that? Why don't you just live your life how God told you to live your life, and maybe you'll get to heaven? But my thing is, don't try to sit here and do everything blatantly hateful, blatantly racist, because you're really targeting us. You're targeting the black communities, and
Mm-hmm.
it's shown all throughout the South,
Mm-hmm.
from Texas all the way to South Carolina to Tennessee down to Florida. You are targeting black people because if you weren't, when the Supreme Court did what they did, you would have said, "Oh well, we ain't got to do that. Let's just have a vote." But you know what? They're afraid of losing the midterm. That's what it's really all about.
I love what you said because it to me it is about fear. And I think even though they don't, some people may not think it, but subconsciously, like I do believe that it is that sense of fear. And I'm like, why does it have to be a power struggle? Why does it have
Mhm.
to be about we have to remain in power? Like this should be about what's in the best interest of people. And that's how I think.
Yeah.
I want to so as we talked about what's going on in the southern states. I want to talk about this. So I know you and I love football, especially college football. And I have to share this. So for the people out there, one of the reasons that Nicholas and I really became close Facebook friends is because we love to talk about our college teams.
Yes, we do.
So as we talk about this topic, I have to talk about Alabama and Auburn because
Mhm.
one of the things that I know you've seen, and I believe I saw your post, is the big topic about the southern states from these, these major colleges, universities like University of Alabama, Auburn University.
Mhm.
You have Tennessee, University of Tennessee, LSU in Louisiana, and even in Florida. We can't leave Florida out. One of the
Right.
things that we are hearing more and more of as people talking about, hey, this may be a time where we have to really get creative. We have to
Mhm.
really think about how we can strategically ensure that our votes are not being taken. Well, when we think about the voting ability, that is not being taken away from us. And so I know you probably saw the clip from Ryan Clark, but it's a lot of people talking about strategically looking at student athletes
Mhm.
and as families considering, hey, if your child is a what is a 4-star
Mhm.
athlete, one of those athletes who pretty much can get a scholarship anywhere,
Right.
consider not sending your child to states like Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, to
Mhm.
these top universities, because essentially when they get there, especially by that time they're either 18 or by the time they graduate or before even if they go to the NFL, you have the right to vote. So
Yeah.
if they dilute your vote, they're basically telling you like, hey, yeah, you're good enough to play at our college. You're good enough to play on the field. You're good enough to make us money, but you're not good enough for your vote to matter.
Yeah.
And the more I listened to that, I said, wow, it really is a creative strategy. But this is where I battle with that. They're student athletes. And I never want to see a family or a child compromise their opportunity to go to an elite school to play. But I get what people are saying. Well, if they got it there, they can get it at HBCU or somewhere up north in the states that are protecting their rights. And it's hard for me to really support putting a student athlete in that, because I've heard people say, well, don't put it on the student athlete. These are choices that adults have to make. And I get it. Like, and like I said, we're both huge, fans of our universities in
Mhm.
Alabama. But it also makes me think, Nicholas, like, I don't like that these athletes that may go to Alabama or Auburn, if this passes, that their vote won't matter,
Mhm.
or not necessarily matter, but essentially you're telling them that your voice doesn't matter and you're trying to dilute their vote. And I'm like, it's a hard pill for me to swallow, because honestly, that's my mindset is I don't want them to go to the schools in these states, because it's not right. It's not fair, because you are telling us as Black people we don't matter. And then somebody kind of said it best about, we're good enough to make money for you. You love us when we making money for you. Let's just be real. When it comes down to revenue, oh, these universities are profiting off of our Black athletes. So I want to hear your perspective, because like I said, I battle with that because I don't want to see athletes having to choose but I also see how, hey, if you got a scholarship here, you can get one there, but it's not guaranteed. What are your thoughts about this whole strategy or creative strategy to help really just to really force people's hand too to make sure like you give us that fair advantage of voting?
Mhm. Um, I look at it as a plantation mindset. You know, when black people were on the plantation, when we were doing all their sharecrops and all of that, we were good enough to do that for them so that they can make money. But we weren't good enough to come in the house. We weren't good enough to eat at their tables. We weren't good enough to eat their fresh food. We had to have the leftovers. This is practically the same. We're good enough to run the ball. We're good enough to tackle. We're good enough to throw the ball. We're good enough to catch a ball because that's going to bring those dollars in that stadium. That's going to bring those dollars in that state. But we're not good enough to have you vote because we don't want you to be heard. We want you to just come in here, do what you are told to do, and then go home. That's a plantation mindset. It's hard on a student because you think about it. Most of these athletes come from homes that already are low income. The mom is working 2, 3 jobs to even put them through, So this is an opportunity for them, especially with this NIL thing going on. These kids are making hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars, something they've never had in their entire life, and able to change their parents, lifestyle in their own whatnot. And it is rough because HBCUs are not offering that same thing, but you can get a great education from HBCU. You can excel in HBCU. There are student athletes who have made it to the league.
Yeah.
From coming from HBCU. I remember Tavares Jackson. He used to play for Alabama State, quarterback for Alabama State. He made it to the NFL, got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. So it's very possible. Yes, the shine ain't the same because those major universities are, televised across the country. But at the same time, without you guys, without the black athletes, I can guarantee you, guess what them views gonna be? Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they're going. When you hit them in that pocket, they're going to start listening to you. They're going to start caring about you. They're going to act like you actually matter because you do matter. And that's what Ryan Clark was trying to say. Let's hit them where it hurt. These SEC programs, they depend on black men, black young men to come out there and play football for them, play basketball for them. They depend on this stuff because guess what? That's bringing in the dollars for them. And if we sit back and say, okay, you know what? Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna send my baby to Tennessee State. I'm gonna send my baby to Jackson State. I'm gonna send my baby to Alabama A&M, Alabama State. Like, if you think about it, if those 4 and 5-star students start going into these HBCU, they're gonna sit back and say, you know what? We don't have to change our ways, or we're gonna be broke.
And you're right, because I do believe too, like if they do choose HBCUs, like they're going to generate the revenue because people are going to want to see them play. So you're right about that. And when you were talking about Tavares Jackson, my mom went back to athletes like Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
And there was also Steve McNair, who's one of my favorite. They both went to HBCUs and they both made it to the NFL. So you're right about that. I think it's just that when people sometimes think about HBCUs and they look at how many of those athletes actually get invited to the combine, not many, but you're right. Like it still can happen. And this could be a way that, hey, we start shifting the mindset, sending, families sending their kids to these HBCUs, and they will profit and make revenue. But I will also say to that, my hope would be that, and it's not every HBCU, but then it comes back to making sure when it comes down to funding, that you manage the funding appropriately, because that's where a lot of times you kind of see like what happened with Coach Deion Sanders. That seemed to be one of the issues at Jack State, and it's like I do believe they can get the athletes. It's just that you're going to have to make sure you're doing right by the management of the funds. So thank you for sharing that. So before we end, I did want to talk about, in recent months, I know you probably saw it where they came in and they seized the 2020 ballots here in Georgia. I was
Yes.
like, are you kidding me? That presidential election. So this kind of ties into like people pulling out all the stops.
Yeah.
So we're in a whole new, like we're going into a whole new election cycle. And my mindset was, why are people focused on what happened in 2020? So to me, this is harmful and dangerous because I do know that the leaders here in Atlanta, they tried to get those ballots back, and so the court denied it. So my thing is, what precedent that could this set if, because then essentially we're not getting those ballots back. So seeing what happened here in Georgia, they seized the ballots, and what they're trying to do too is they're also trying to find out who worked the elections. They're trying to get the addresses and names of people who worked the election. So you got seizing the ballots. Now you're trying to find out the poll workers. Like, what precedent will this set if that information, number one, is seized about the people who work the polls, but also the fact that a state, that an administration can go in and seize ballots? Like, what precedent will that set for future elections?
Well, other states will try it. Do the same thing, and really, this is a big distraction. Everything that happened, Trump know he lost that state. Like he lost fair and square. Like there's no reason to do any of this. You actually called the governor of Georgia and asked this man to find you some votes. Like you really did this. And when he would not do it, you want to talk about him. You want to talk badly about him. And he does that. Anyone who doesn't do what he says do or how he says do it, then you're not loyal to me, so I'm gonna talk about you. Look at Marjorie Taylor, his number one supporter. Now she's scum of the earth to him. And that's the thing. Like what they did in Georgia, I'm surprised states. Well, most of your red states won't do that no way because they won. But you think about if any of your battleground states had lost, they'd have been looking into that. If North Carolina had lost, if Virginia had lost, if Pennsylvania, like all these states would be following the same blueprint. Oh, let's go see if because Trump should have won because he was the better candidate. Now let's look at the numbers. 78 million people voted for Trump. There's 350 million people in the United States. That's only a third of the United States of people voting. Not even a whole third at that. So 70 some million people voted for Kamala, and another maybe 5% did not voted for someone else. Over half the country did not vote. That is crazy to me. So you're going to Georgia. This is only one state. You're going to Georgia. You won the election. So you're going to Georgia trying to find votes to see if they stole the election. Bro, you won. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you didn't. You lost that year. That's the year you lost to Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So it was unfair because you lost that one.
Mm-hmm.
But when you won, all of a sudden, that was the way it was supposed to win. But see, the thing is, Georgia wrong for doing what they did. Georgia should have stood their ground and said, look, we did a fair election. There's no reason for you guys to come down here and try to look at what we did as if we're incompetent. We're not incompetent. We knew what we were doing. Our poll people, that's illegal anyway for you to go and try to find those people. That's a threat. Why are you trying to threaten people and tell them all those poll workers? It's an intimidation move.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at it as, okay, all around the country now, they're looking at the state of Georgia. Oh, they're being intimidated. I don't want to go through that. So he's trying to instill fear into other states, and everybody gonna be like, you got to just stand up to them. That's what you got to do to bullies anyway. Any bully, just stand up to them and say, I'm not gonna take it.
And I agree. I will say too, when I was watching the news and they were saying like the judges basically sided with this administration, I'm thinking this is where it goes back to people when we elect them. But the reality is, when you have the majority, like in these positions,
unfortunately, a lot of them are supporting the foolishness.
Yep.
And so that was the part I do believe, even though you may be of that party, like you said, when you get to that level in those positions, you know right from wrong. You know, you know absolutely when you're siding with someone who is elite trying to do something illegal, but it's almost, and in my head, I'm thinking like, what are you going to lose for making the right decision?
Right.
Nothing. It's nothing that he can do to you. So that's the sad part because people are not making decisions that are just, are right. And I'm thinking you're willing to compromise your position for the sake of whether it's fear or money. I'm not quite sure. But going back to the 2020, I'm like, that election is over. And in my mind, I was trying to wrap my head around like, what is that accomplishing by getting those ballots? Like, what are you really going to do with it? And even like trying to find out the poll workers, what that says to me is you're trying to instill fear in these people.
Yep.
And to even try to get access to their information, which is illegal, like that would make me afraid. And honestly, that would make me not want to serve as a poll worker
Yep.
if they actually approve that part.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't heard any more about that, but it's going to be interesting to see how what's going to unfold from there. So with that being said, as we close out, I want to close out on one important question, but so I want your input and I'll share my input. So as we think about, we have a runoffs in some states, we'll also have the midterms. And the reality is you always hear around election time, people check your voting status.
Mm-hmm.
Check your voting status. What would you say to people? Because I saw this actually come up on my feed from one of my stores. She was saying how her son went to go vote and they told him he couldn't vote. He would have to wait until midterms. And I was like, wait a minute. He voted last year. Why would someone tell him that? So what would you say to people who are, going to vote and just some things that you would say to avoid any barriers? Because like in that situation, I didn't get a chance to reach out to her, but I wanted to ask her, did she get more insight? Because he should not have been deterred or sent away from voting. But what would you say is like any tips or recommendations for people as we approach, voting, things that they could do to make sure they are good to go on voting day?
People, go out and check for yourself. Do not rely on what you heard. Don't rely on, oh, you good. No, check it out for yourself. You can avoid a lot of trouble when you go into those polls by just you got 5 months. We got 5 months right now to the midterms. Go do what you got to do right now. Get it out the way. Don't procrastinate because this is a serious matter right now. And what we do in November as people is going to decide a whole lot. Because if you keep the majority in that Congress as Republicans, there's a chance they're going to try to make Trump a third term. There's a chance that you think redistricting is going to be a problem. That's going to be the least of your worries. Because the thing is, they're going to try to segregate things. They're going to do everything in their powers to make sure that you remember that you are inferior to them. And you have to understand what's really going on. What's at stake right now? Your rights. Your rights as a citizen of this United States. Look at the birthright things. Your birthright. It's funny how it works for him, but doesn't work for anyone else because his son is technically falls right up under that. His wife was not a citizen when that child was born, but no one's talking about that. So get out, go get the information. Even if you know that your voter status is good, check again. There's nothing wrong with making sure that you have the right to vote, that all of your information is correct. If you know your number is changed, if your address is changed, if you move, any of that stuff, go. They will try any and everything. It almost happened yesterday when me and my wife went. She actually, her maiden name, it came up under her maiden name and not her married name. And had the black lady not been there, she probably wouldn't have been able to vote yesterday. Mm-hmm. So you got to check your information. Don't just go to the polls assuming that you're going to vote because any slight thing, they're going to try it. Address change, they phone them ain't got nothing to do with it, but they going to be like, hey, your number changed. Like, it has nothing to do with that. Just go and make sure for yourself. There's so many ways you could do it. You got your you could check on the website. You could go personally downtown. I know it's here, state Alabama. Go downtown to the state building. There are so many different ways. There's a phone number that you could call. Just make sure your status is good and active and not inactive, because there are people that think they can vote and their status saying inactive. They are depending on that. They are depending on you not to get up off that couch. They are depending on you to just work through the election. They are depending on you to say, you know what, my vote doesn't count. They are depending on people like you. Let's prove them wrong.
Absolutely. And I definitely couldn't have said it any better. So thank you, Nicholas, for sharing that. And he is absolutely right. I moved in October of last year. And one thing I did is after I moved, I checked to see, because I did the whole making sure, like, let me update my address so that I'll be okay to vote. And I was calling, I was trying to make sure. And so even as the primary, as the early voting was approaching, and even primary, like prior to that, I was online, because you can actually Google like your voter status. And so of course, when I had called a few months prior, the lady said, well, we received your application. She said, we're in the process of working on it. And I was, in my head, I was thinking, why does it take that long? Because I knew I did it in advance. And I was thinking, surely it should not be taking that long. So this was right around maybe, I guess, January, February, but you can best bet that I was checking before we were approaching like early voting, and it was definitely updated. So like Nicholas said, you all, there are so many ways, and as much as people, we know a lot of people have phones, even if you can't go, go downtown, Google, like look online. Literally, I typed in voter status. And so, of course, I was able to see the link to where I could pull it up for the Secretary of State. So the information is out there, and it is so important to check your status. And even with him saying, like, with the name change, he's so right. Like a simple getting married name change, they will use that against you. And he is absolutely right. So definitely make sure that you take the time to check your voting status ahead of time. So with that being said, everyone, thank you for those who had the opportunity to tune in. Those that didn't, my prayer and hope is that you will watch this later. Please feel free, because it's definitely this segment, episode 9, Voting 2026, will definitely be on YouTube. Please share with people the importance of voting. And just share with them what's currently going on in our climate, and maybe that will fuel them to go vote. Because as Mr. Vaughn has said, voting is important, but it is so important now more than ever, because I don't know about you, but I know he and I do not want to go back. I refuse to go back. So we have to do our due diligence of sharing information, the truth, speaking the truth, and telling people about the impact, the reality of what could happen and what's actually going to happen if you don't exercise your right to vote. So on that note, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vines. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you always standing firm and speaking your truth. This segment was so needed. It was truly needed. I was up in the air about doing one this month, and then I was like, there was so much that was happening. And I said, there was no way. Part of my advocacy work and part of my passion is public policy. So to those of you out there, I didn't share on the front end, but just know part of why this platform exists is because part of my calling, part of my purpose is to spread the awareness and talk about the injustices that exist among people of color. And I will always speak the unapologetic truth. And as I shared before, that's part of what my dissertation tied into, like discrimination, racism, injustice. And so this is part of what I am able to do to keep my dissertation alive, to spread information that relates to the injustices that exist in our country. And I'll always continue to do that, because that is something that everybody won't do. And some people will be afraid to do it. And so part of my calling, my gift is being able to create this platform that allows me to bring on guests like Mr. Vance, who is passionate about, similar things like I am. And so we can share with you all that knowledge, because it's all about teaching, educating, and spreading knowledge so that we can become more knowledgeable and make better decisions. Right. So everyone, thank you. Be blessed. Have a fantastic night. And as we approach midterms in the upcoming months, get ready, because it is not done. The job is not finished yet.
It's not.
All right. Good night, everyone. What'd you say, Mr. Vines?
I told them to go vote.
Go vote. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Bye.